passed. So I'd like to see what you plan on doing. Is it gonna be a white stucco with red tile roof? Because that's gonna dated. I mean, is there any chance to change things?
So to give you an understanding where we are in the process, we had the meeting with the design build firms yesterday. The committee, the ad hoc committee recommended one of those design build teams, and that was the company called Wiener, okay? The board considered their recommendation tonight and accepted. There are some things we're gonna ask them to tweak, because there were some aspects of other proposals we liked a little better that we wanted to incorporate. In terms of the holistic view of the club, we kind of need to work within the style we have because the cost associated with completely changing the exterior appearance of the club is pretty prohibitive. So you're going to get a proposal that's going to be a Southwest themed club. That said, I don't know how many of you watched the Riviera, the Northern Trust Open. That's the same theme as Riviera. So there's pretty good company in terms of that theme.
So
In
you'll be
terms of
having, you'll be having a different design for us to look at before we make this.
Very, very, very different than the last one you saw. So this one is going to have, and I can just run you through the very basics. You'll see some more detail. This one's going to have a porte cochere out front, an entry hall that shoots a straight shot back, a higher ceiling straight shot back through to the golf shop. The main hall going east to west is going to be widened so you can stand at the T of the north-south hallway here in the east-west hall and see all the way through the clubhouse, all the way out the doors, all the way to the mountains. You'll be able to see where you're going out that direction. Member dining is going to be on the west side. That hallway is going to be upgraded, modernized. I think this is slated as a fitness center. We've got a kids' play area over there by the dining area for those parents that have kids that want to be able to see them and be near them, but not have them at your table. I think the last design you saw, a lot of the feedback we got was, hey, great, you're tacking the bar on the side of the clubhouse. We listed that. The design that we picked, it was the company that came in and presented a design that said, we're going to be able to touch almost every surface in the clubhouse. Up and down, upstairs, downstairs. We're going to be able to give you a clubhouse for the money that you've given us that is going to feel almost new. Now, we're going to stay predominantly within the same shell, but all of those things that we talked about on the list, the very casual indoor dining, the outdoor dining, the fitness facilities, the kids facilities, all of those things are going to be there. And it's member prioritized. So we're to the folks at Digital Globe, to the First Bank customers, the goal is to provide our members with that first-class experience. Provide them that opportunity where you can bring your clients up here, set them out on that patio and show them the best view of West Pittsburgh. Provide them that opportunity to enjoy that good private club experience. I think when you see the design, and we're going to try to push it out as soon as we get the floor plan modified. So basically, we're working with the architect to get some feedback incorporated, and we'll push it out. I think you'll see that it's very different from what we had the last time around.
Scott, I just let them know that you're going to cover the
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry. So obviously, we don't have everything at this point because of the way the process, and we're coming up on the year end at the end of March, and we're also dealing with some construction schedules, and that's kind of why the process was timed the way it is. But as soon as we get that information so that we can publish everything to the members, we want to be able to provide you with a detailed list of what's going to happen on the golf course, what we're going to address at the pool. We want to be able to provide you with the drawings of the floor plans, some elevations. We're going to push that out as soon as we possibly can. And the meeting that is going to be scheduled for the 19th of March is basically your opportunity to come in and ask any question you want, and we'll go through it. We want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to be heard. Tom offered to come in and tape that one too, so people that can't see it have an opportunity to be caught up. And I will offer, and I know Mike's the same way, if anybody has any question that you don't want to ask in this forum or you want to ask offline, it's an open book process, guys. If you want to see something more, just ask the question and we'll take the time.
I have a little question about the timing. Preliminarily, we've heard that the golf course will be closed from October to March when they do the golf course improvements. What about the clubhouse and the availability for members when the clubhouse renovation takes place?
There is gonna be an impact, and the timing depends on the schedule of the firm. So we haven't worked out a firm schedule with any of these firms. What you're looking at is an ability to phase portions of it, but that is a trade-off with the duration of the construction, right? So that the time schedules ranged from the proposals that were presented from 6.5 months on the low side, if we just closed it down and going low, right? To almost a year on the high side if we did it phase by phase by phase. So you gotta kind of try to balance once you get to a final plan, renovation fatigue from the going-ons and just getting it in and done. There will be some periods of closure. The goal we've expressed to all of the contractors is we want to do everything we can to minimize the member impact. I think it's important to understand there will be an impact. We're going to be basically touching every surface of the clubhouse. It's the unavoidable consequence, but we will do everything we can to make it a minimal impact, and we will do everything we can to make sure that the maximum impact is timed with the periods of lowest usage of the contract.
I assume you've looked at the impact on revenue by closing the club down for those kind of periods.
We have acutely.
So Scott, this feels like deja vu. I've stood in this room now 3 different times, and I've actually very vehemently defended the plan to improve the club and make us more competitive and more exclusive and more of an experience for our members and for prospective members. So now I'm actually going to take a contrarian perspective. And I'm going to ask you a question that relates to not the money we're going to spend to improve our experience and to make our club better and to make it more competitive, but rather I'm going to ask the question, what if we don't spend the money to improve or to make it a better experience? What kind of money are we going to outlay anyway to maintain something that most of us recognize is actually declining from a competitive and a desirable perspective? So that contrarian perspective is now my point of view. What happens if we don't do this?
So many of you may have seen the email that went out yesterday. February of each year is our budget process time. And the finance committee meets and the finance committee considers what the budget is going to look like the next year. This year, the finance committee did that, and because we do not have an approval yet, the finance committee had to focus on perspective on what's going to happen if the renovation is not approved. As you may have seen in the letter, the 7-year historic trend at the club is a 5% decline annually in membership per year. We had the conversation at the finance committee level. Is there any reason without a membership vote and approval of a renovation that we should expect that to reverse itself? The answer was no. So we had to design a budget that incorporated that membership loss. That budget included a very large operational deficit. We then had the conversations about what do you do to close that. We talked about the dues revenue. At the end of the day, the conversation was, well, if you raise the dues enough to make up for the operational deficit, we're not even talking about the capital deficit, but just the operational deficit. It would have been an increase in excess of 10%. We asked ourselves, what's that going to do to that member loss trend? And our thought was that's probably going to accelerate it, probably pretty substantially. So the decision of the finance committee was to say, look, the most we thought we could do in terms of a dues increase was 5% without having a dramatic impact on membership attrition. That left us with an operating deficit still of $163,000. It's the first time in the club's history we've had an operating deficit, and it's because of the loss in members. We're losing in current dollar perspectives about $500,000 a year now as compared to 7 years ago. If we had the membership level we had 7 years ago. So, the question then is, what do you have to do to fill that gap? Because you have a $163,000 operating gap and a $160,000+ capital gap, and that's with the full assessment. So that's with a $900 assessment this year. And the answer is you can't run at a deficit, so you got to start cutting things. We had already asked all of our staff and department heads to come back to us with budgets that were as lean as possible without affecting the member experience. Meaning, we want you to cut out anything and everything that you can cut without adversely affecting what's going on here. The next set of cuts are going to have to adversely affect service. It's going to be fewer employees predominantly, fewer services offered, less ground maintenance, less of everything that affects employees. But even those cuts, we've taken a look at what they might look like. They don't reduce it. So we've looked at, do we refinance our debt? Well, we can do that, and we can lower our payments, but it doesn't erase the deficit, and we're going to have to sink additional money in terms of loan fees and refinance fees to do that. The last option we kind of looked at is, well, what other revenue streams can we tap to try to get out of that deficit situation? We can tap the public one. The short answer, Tim, is that effective basically in April, the club's going to have to change next fiscal year. And we can choose to renovate and do something to try to align ourselves better with market expectations, or we're going to have to suffer the consequences of what our financial position is, and that's going to be a diminished club from where we are now. There's really not a way around that.
Question about the golf playability, and if we do this slowly, we can still have a great golf.
I will tell you that discussion is still ongoing in terms of how we do that, because the golf course has probably more than other aspects of the proposed renovation, a lot of competing interests, right? There's how do we minimize the impact? Can we confine the renovations to one that is completely open? What time of year? How far do we drag it out? All of that stuff's being considered. The short answer is, in terms of phasing it, I think that that's something that's possible, but I think you definitely want to get it done in the winter time, right? That's our lowest usage period. We are doing everything we can to minimize the disruption. I know in past times, when we've done golf course projects, we've seeded in greens, but we budgeted for sod this time, which dramatically decreases the amount of downtime. We're planning to do it during the winter, which basically, that's what we've done with a lot of our construction recently. The idea is to keep it as minimal as possible for impact on members. I think we're considering all of those things, as well as what specific improvements can we do really to enhance our membership situation. That's kind of the driver there, because we just talked about what happens if we don't. So the short answer to that question is, we don't have a definitive set of improvements that has been selected. That was the one area we still need to follow up on at the board level. We're working on that. We'll have something probably by sometime next week. But regardless of what's selected, the goal is going to be to minimize the member impact. We do not want a situation where prime season comes around next year and we're still playing on temporary fields.
What group is going to be responsible for those decisions?
At this level, so we've done a lot of stuff to gather input. I'm sure you all saw the email about the member forum. I think that was last week. We've also sought substantial input from Ed, from Jeff, from past chairs of the board, from Modern Golf, from Kevin Atkinson. We've also talked to, we've looked at THK's recommendations. We've talked to other course operators and other private club operators to kind of see what's attracting people, in addition to just looking at our own demographic and how we line up as a golf course as compared to other golf courses around here. The decision now lies with the board. The information has been gathered. It's a situation where we're now analyzing which set of options is the best one to balance all those competing considerations. And it's, like I said, honestly, it's probably the most complex decision-making process of the entire renovation, because tennis and swimming, that kind of easily presented itself. The design-build process, that came from the contractors, and we kind of had a 1 in 4, pick one to kind of see who met your needs the best. The golf course, we need to balance the needs of our existing members. We need to balance the needs of our target market that we're going to, and figure out how we need to achieve our goal of driving membership here. And that's well, there's a reason that's the last thing that's been done, because that's a tough discussion to have. Any other questions or comments?
Hey Scott, if this gets passed, when would this start?
So the goal, and that's kind of one of the reasons for the timing of trying to wrap it up this month. What we've been told is Westminster is kind of a 6-month approval process. So our goal is to begin construction in earnest at the end of this year. So basically after the golf season is complete, but before the dead of winter. Our goal would be to be out of the construction as early as possible next year. The designs or the schedules that we've looked at so far, which are extremely preliminary, have put us in the May, June, July timeframe in terms of finishing up work on the clubhouse. Obviously, varying aspects on the outdoor stuff would be phrased differently, but we would like to be out of here by the middle of next year.
When does this go to vote?
The vote is going to basically be between March 19th and March 30th.